Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? My name's Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Rick, the depression.
Yep.
I feel like because of the way drafts were set up, because Rick and I both had a league where this happened. If you were in redraft, there is a good chance that if you drafted Jamar Chase late first, you probably drafted Breece Hall at some point. So if that happened, you got absolutely porked this week. Breece Hall, OTS. Jamar Chase decided to break his hip.
Yeah.
So bad stuff. Bad stuff.
I thought about becoming a full-time, maybe like a full-time tennis fan or something. Moving on from fantasy football.
You could do fantasy golf.
Fantasy golf. I think I'd rather jump off my apartment building.
Rick would do fantasy golf and draft Tiger Woods.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude, it sucks.
All day.
The thing that makes it worse is like, if this was like a one-time thing, it's whatever. But this is the third straight year because I had McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Barkley first, and then last year I had McCaffrey. I had the first overall pick. I took McCaffrey. Right. And then this year, Breece Hall, who I know was a fourth-round pick, but was still my RB1 on my team. So 3 straight years, my RB1 goes down with a season-ending injury. Within, not even at the end of the season, within the first, I know we're a decent chunk into the season, but 6 or 7 games into the year, my RB1 goes down with a season-ending injury. Next year, I might not even draft running backs. Maybe I'll just draft be one of those 0 RB people, but not for the strategy, just to avoid running back pain.
Bro, this is what you did this year. Diggs, Chase.
Yeah, but I'll do it even next level. 4th round, I'll take Jalen Waddle, and then I probably would have taken DJ Moore.
Yeah.
So
man, really bad for people who had that. I do have a league too where I had Breece Hall and Jamar Chase. Trying to figure out how to recover in that one. It's going to be a challenge. But didn't we also have a league where we both had Hall and Chase, or was that in the tough league?
Yeah.
How did we get so many shares of Hall and Chase? What the heck?
I don't know.
Anyway, don't fret. Don't panic. Don't give up. Unless if you were 0-6 and that happened to you, it's over. I apologize for your lack of fantasy success. And
even if you're I think it's over no matter what, but
Rick over here is 4-3. He's 4-3. He's going up against one of the better teams in the league in our home league, and he's.
And Bateman got me 0 points on Thursday Night Football.
Oh, you started Bateman? That even makes it worse.
Yep.
So yeah, he's
toast.
He's probably toast this week, but maybe, just maybe, something happens and he squeaks out a dub. He squeaks it out. 5-3. You can recover. Yeah. You can recover from 4-4. I mean, for the love of God, this week I might be 3-5. According to Fantasy Pros, I have one of the best rosters in the league. According to the experts, okay?
Sure.
So yours is injury related. Mine is win-loss related, my pain.
I think even when Chase comes back, though, I'm still going to have a bottom half.
Yeah, probably.
The Hall thing really hurt. But
yeah. But either way, we're going to try to help you rebound, recover with our Trade Targets show. Give you some advice on guys you should trade for, some guys that maybe you can trade away, and move on from there. All right?
Mm.
Before we do that, check out on our website, fantasyhumans.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on a podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review and share this pod with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have for us. Before we jump into the buys and sells program, Rick is currently dealing and suffering with this pain. I have a question, Rick. When you run into these injuries, or for the home league, what's your plan? What are you going to do? How are you going to fix it?
I don't know. I do have an offer on the table from someone in our league. The 2 guys he just put on the block for Diggs. So I could do that. I could try to trade Lamar. I got to make deals, I think, is the only way.
Yeah.
I can't stay put. Might stay put this week. We'll see, but I do have to make some trades. I think since I have Trevor Lawrence, I'd rather trade Lamar if I can get some quality players for him. Mm-hmm. And then I'll just go down with the ship with T-Law. But
burn.
I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, so I was in a similar situation a few weeks ago as Rick. I had, I made a list of my roster, and I said, I itemized it. So it was like studs. All the guys that I think are studs on my team, upgradable. The guys I think are upgradable, but I can live with. And then got to get rid of this guy. There needs to be an upgrade. We need to 5-alarm fire alert. Then I had a list of guys like that. I do not usually count guys on my bench. I only count guys I would start in my starting lineup on a week-to-week basis. I had 4 studs on my team. Guys that I would be like, okay, I'm fine holding them. I don't need to upgrade them. There was a lot of upgrades, and there were a lot of I got to get rid of this guy. That has changed since week 3. I made a ton of trades, and now I'm up to 6 or 7 guys that I think I could just stick with the rest of the season and be good. So realistically, Rick's kind of in the same position at this point. So what I did is we don't typically recommend doing 2-for-1s where you're getting 2 players. Well, usually you want to sell 2 players to get a superstar. But if you have a guy that's like Rick, for example, has Stefon Diggs in this league, right? You could reasonably trade Diggs, who is ranked right now, I would say, is the wide receiver 2 behind Cooper Kupp. You could trade that away for 2 very, very good players. If you're struggling in a certain position and you can find a player that, like for Diggs, right? What is the average on a points per game basis?
He's at 24 points a game.
Yeah, all right. You're not going to find a replacement for that. But for example, my wide receiver 1 in the same league is AJ Brown. He averages about 14 or 15 points per game. So if you can find a wide receiver 1 that averages 15 points a game, and then get another running back to fix your running back situation, that'll equalize your roster a little bit, give you more weapons than less. In 4-point touchdown leagues that are not 2 quarterback leagues or super flex leagues, if you have a superstar quarterback and your roster's flailing, the first place you got to start is your quarterback. That's you got to deal that. See if somebody in the league is willing to take whatever quarterback you have. You have to have Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Who else is at the top? Patrick Mahomes. So it's if you have somebody like that, you might be able to get an asset that you can help with your roster and then stream quarterbacks, because that's a totally reasonable situation. So, I had Lamar was one of my studs, traded him away to Rick, and I got Chris Godwin, essentially. I got more than that. I got Godwin and Pollard?
Pollard.
So, obviously, Pollard's kind of working out right now, but when Zeke gets back, I don't know how much that's going to be a help to me. But Chris Godwin gave me another asset that I could use for my team. So it's just all about figuring out what works and what doesn't. If you feel like your roster, I feel like the advice of saying, always offer 2-for-1s where you're getting the stud player, those work when your roster is close. It's close to being good. Right now, I like my roster, so I've been sending out 2-for-1 deals to people for upgrades at certain positions. And if you're like Rick, where you have 3 guys, it's time to wheel and deal. Yeah. And you got 2 guys that you definitely could trade and get. You could turn those 2 guys into 4 starting assets for your team. So, just be patient and figure it out. Fantasy football's a wacky environment too. Guys can have weird weeks, man. I've lost to some pretty bad teams. So
I don't know. It's just it's depressing. That's all.
Yeah, I got you. But anyway, so in order to help you with that, we're going to give you some players that you should be targeting in trades, and help rebuild your roster. So let's do that. Without further ado, we'll start with the buys. Rick, tell us who the first buy is.
Okay, the first buy on this list is Wan'Dale Robinson.
Wan'Dale.
Yeah, there was a tweet that you didn't like, but from my boy Dad Bud on Twitter, and he said, what did he say? Like, well, everybody gets Tooney. I'm going after Robinson. Yep. We're not the same. Yep. Which I kind of, I mean, maybe not the Tooney thing. Like I was on the board to try to get Kadarius Tooney, but I do agree with the Robinson part, where I think it doesn't necessarily open things up for him because Tooney hasn't been playing anyway, but it just solidifies what his role is going to be rest of season. Yeah. Which is kind of what we expected it to be for Tooney. I think the Giants are not a crazy passing offense by any means, but Daniel Jones has been efficient this year in his limited passing work. Like this past week, he threw 200 yards, a touchdown, had 19 completions. So if he just does that, I think Wan'Dale will be in a good spot because they have no receivers, right? Yeah. Kenny Galladay's out of the picture. I don't even know if he's active anymore. Like he might even be a healthy scratch at this point. They're so done with him.
Slayton's favorite room in the building is the training room where he gets his injuries repaired.
Yeah, so Slayton's been on and off the field. Shepard is out for the season. Kadarius Toney's no longer on the team. So it's really just Wan'Dale Robinson and then was it David Stills? And I don't even know, Jesse James. That's the receiving core right now. So this past week, Giants had 30 pass attempts. Wan'Dale Robinson had 8 targets. So he's going to be the number one target in that offense. And he plays the slot. So he should be efficient for PPR leagues. He might not be huge in half PPR and standard leagues because he might not get a lot of huge yardage games. Like this past week, again, had just 50 yards, but he had 6 catches for 50 yards. So he had 11 fantasy points, which is good. The week before that was his first game back, so he played in limited fashion. But he had touchdowns, so he had 12 fantasy points. I think he's going to be a low-end or maybe like a high-end wide receiver 3. He'll be a good flex, basically, from this point on, rest of the season. He's going to be a really solid flex. I think he's going to get you about 12 fantasy points a week. And that's really solid, and you can get him at a pretty cheap price. I think you could probably get him for your regular old bench player who doesn't really do much for you. And I think you can upgrade that and go get Wan'Dale Robinson right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, the biggest situation right now, and I wish I could see it on a week-to-week basis and not as a whole on the season. But I mean, obviously we know the Giants are one of those low volume passing share kind of teams. They're not going to throw it over 25. I don't think Daniel Jones has thrown it over 25 times this year in a game. I don't have a stat.
No, he has.
He has?
Yeah, a couple times.
Okay, all right. Listen, that's good news.
He had 30 pass attempts this past week. 27 the 2 weeks before that.
Oh, it was I don't know. I don't know who it was. Oh yeah, so he's had a couple of games at 30, but they're a low passing volume offense. You want to see, your quarterback passing 50 times a game. That's Tom Brady. 35 times or more in a game. Yeah, that's where you would want to be. And he's had one game where he's done that on the season. The rest of them, he's been around I want to say an average of 25 to 27 pass attempts a game. Yeah. So in a low target volume offense, a guy like Wan'Dale, I'm not going to lie, their offense really isn't efficient or very good. They're winning football games because their defense keeps them in it and they stay close the whole time and then pull it out in the end. That's essentially how the Giants have been winning football games. Which is good. Good for them. But their offense, if they lose the lead fast, they're not coming back. It's not happening. And they can't,
if they have to play from behind.
They can't move the ball downfield at will. So, but the only thing that really works for them is Saquon Barkley. That's about it. But I will say Wandale is really good because he is the only guy in the offense. And he I would say like he probably commands a 30% target share without Kadarius Toney at this point.
Yeah, I would agree.
And like if he does that and they're throwing it 25 to 30 times a game, then he's definitely going to be somewhere between, if my math is right, somewhere between 7 to 10 targets.
Yep.
Which is good. So I definitely agree with that. I think the Kadarius Toney, because the big thing that everyone's saying is like, now that Toney's gone, Wandale is the guy. That is true. But Toney wasn't playing to begin with.
Right, he wasn't playing.
So, like, this was already Wandale. Like, we already know what Wandale Robinson looks like without Kadarius Toney at this point. And so in week 6 and 7, he's had 4 targets and 8 targets, and really week 7 was his first like big game back, 67% snaps, 8 targets in that time. So good wide receiver, but he's the only guy. So I would definitely trade for him. If he's on your waiver wire, I would go after him too. Number 2, we got DeAndre Swift. Swifty, my guy.
DeAndre Swift.
Tell us why DeAndre Swift's a buy, Rick.
DeAndre Swifty.
Swifty.
Yeah, no, he's 100% a buy. The fantasy manager who has him probably a little disappointed with his season, which has nothing really to do with Swift. He's just been injured. In week 1 was the only week that he's been healthy all year, and he had 26 fantasy points. In week 2, he got injured in the game, still in just a 51% snap percentage and 7 touches. Yeah. He had 16 fantasy points. And then in week 3, played in a limited role and also got injured, had just 10 touches, still got 7 fantasy points. In the second quarter, he had 7 fantasy points. Swift is a PPR machine, and I think people forget, because of his injuries, how ridiculous he is when he's healthy. I think, personally, when he is on the field and he is healthy, I could make the argument he's a top 5 running back in PPR. And that's how I view him. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big Swift guy, and his schedule isn't that bad either. And he's, for the first time again since week 1, it appears to be he's fully healthy. He's not on the injury report. He's expected to have like a full workload this week against the Dolphins. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, you're still going to have to give up a lot. It's not like you're getting him cheap.
Yeah.
But I would give up a high quality level player for Swift. I don't know. I'm trying to think of some examples, but like I know in my league, we were talking about how when my situation is in our home league and I have Stephon Diggs, I was trying to trade Diggs for Swift plus a receiver.
Yeah.
And I would do that in a heartbeat for one of his other receivers. So something like that, maybe not Diggs, but someone who's a little lower on the totem pole for receiver.
Yeah.
I would do. I mean, I know like I would trade Devontae Adams straight up for him. I would trade DeAndre Hopkins straight up for him. I'd trade CeeDee Lamb straight up for him. I personally, which is crazy, I've come a long way, but I'd probably trade Nick Chubb for Swift. I know that might be a hot take, but I would. Outside of McCaffrey and Barkley, I think Swift is probably my third.
Feels like a lateral move, but I get what you're saying.
It does feel like a lateral move. But basically, my takes for Swift, my love for Swift is just insane. Yeah, he's got a Swiftie. I think doing this on the fly, I would have to think about it. But rest of the season, personally, I would have Swift as my RB3 in all fantasy.
Wow. Okay, that's hot.
I'm a Swift guy.
His ECR right now in Fantasy Pros is 9, I think, 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So you are.
I think it'll go up a little bit when he plays, but I think most people would have him at like 6 or 7.
Yeah. So I would probably hold him at 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that vicinity. I do like Swift. Big thing about Swift is that Rick was throwing out some of these big names here that you might have to use to pay DeAndre Swift. He's been out for so many weeks, and there's so much stuff going on with Swift. You might be able to get him for cheaper.
You might.
You might be able to get him for cheaper. And if that's the case, like I know in our home league, there's a situation with, the team that has him where they don't like to make trades to begin with. Their team is, pretty good right now. So they feel like they're in a good spot and they just don't want to deal Swift. And their opinion on Swift before the draft was through the roof, and their opinion right now on Swift is still through the roof. So, like, if the team that has him in your league is just kind of like neutral on DeAndre Swift, you might be able to pull off a trade. And so that's kind of where my view comes from, is that right now, like, Swift, obviously we know, like, Rick and I both have DeAndre Swift at minimum in our top 6 or 7 rest of season. But, like, so we, value Swift, but, like, I look at the situation where you might be able to maybe get trade value for, like, the running back 10, 11, 12 instead, and send a little bit less for DeAndre Swift and get more in return. Because there is other aspects to the situation with DeAndre Swift where it's like, I feel like he's been in the trainer's room a million times since last year. So he's been dealing with injuries and other things. But I think it's definitely one of those buy low situations where he hasn't been on the field. People haven't seen him, like, they're getting restless, and might be a good time to, nothing has happened. Fantasy football is very, what do they call it? When you're very in the moment, what is that called?
I'm
trying to find
the
phrase.
I was going to say present, but that doesn't really make sense.
No, they react. So
it's
like,
very reactive.
If you don't see DeAndre Swift playing well,
mm-hmm.
You're like, even if he comes back that week, you're not like, oh my God, this guy's going to be elite.
Right.
But as soon as he has a really good game, then all of a sudden it reminds you why you have DeAndre Swift. And then he becomes impossible to trade for. So going into this weekend, try to get DeAndre Swift. It's a good trade asset. Any other thoughts on Swifty?
No, we can move on.
All right. Number 3 is Keenan Allen, who also has been in the same boat as DeAndre Swift the last couple weeks, where he's been injured. He's been out. I think this guy is a top 12, top 14 wide receiver in fantasy football, who currently on the ECR is being ranked at 20 because of the injury. Fine. I think he's coming back this week.
He came back last week, but
he came back.
And this partly will be to your advantage. He only had 3 fantasy points, but he only played a 30% snap percentage, and they said that they were just trying to ease him back into game action.
Yeah, kind of like
but the average
Bill
fantasy
Mac
person
Jones on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I know. But the average like Joe Schmo is just gonna see that he had 3 fantasy points and be like, "What the heck, dude?"
Right.
And are gonna be very overreactive to it. But yeah, no, Keenan Allen's great. And even now, like with Mike Williams being out a couple weeks, I think Keenan Allen could explode after the bye week when he comes back. And also, like, I've watched a lot of Chargers games this year, and their offense is disgusting. That's a side note, but they have a lot of like short passing plays, which is going to be perfect for Keenan Allen. I think he's going to get like 11, 12 targets a game. He's going to get like 8 or 9 catches and just be a PPR machine.
Yep.
For sure, top 15 receiver, maybe even top 12 rest of season for me. And I know people are concerned about his age and injuries, which is a concern. That is valid. But I think as long as he's on the field, look at what D-Hop did this past week.
Yeah.
Coming back for the Cardinals, I think it's going to be similar for Keenan Allen. D-Hop had 14 targets, 10 catches, 103 yards, 20 fantasy points. I think it's gonna. I don't know about 20 fantasy points every week, but he's gonna be a very, very good player.
How many targets did he have in 30% of snaps? You said 3, right?
He had 2, which is kind of gross.
Okay. Yeah,
but again, he was. Like I said, they tried to ease him back into game action.
That's like 9 targets.
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
But yeah, again, I think Mike Williams is out 4 to 6 weeks. They are on a bye this week, so. We'll see. He's probably going to miss like 3 games, which isn't crazy, but I think it's a great time to buy him. Fantastic time to buy him.
Yeah,
he's not going to be not going to get him for just nothing because people who had him probably held on to him and still like the player, but this is probably the cheapest he's going to be.
Yeah, agreed. Let's move to the sells. Number 1, we have Deontay Johnson.
I'm interested to hear you say this because I'm in a situation where I could hit a button and he would be on my team right now. So,
yikes. So I don't necessarily dislike Deontay.
Because he's getting targets.
He does get targets, and he, like, the target share has not changed. What the problem is for me is that, you have to look at, like, the first couple games of the season, like, the efficiency wasn't great, but he was catching about 60 to 70% of his passes. After they put Kenny Pickett in the last 3 weeks, 13 targets, 5 catches, 7 targets, 5 catches, 10 targets, 5 catches. He's basically catching at 45% of his catches. Yeah. And, like, this is not Deontay. Like, this is not, like, Deontay's not a bad route runner or a bad receiver. He's not getting good target share from his quarterback, regardless of whether it's Mitch or regardless of whether it's freaking Kenny Pickett. The offense is not efficient, and they're not going to be efficient. They're going to score 17 points a game. They're going to score 20, around 20 points a game and be a team that scores maybe 1 or 2 offensive touchdowns in a game.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, juxtaposed to last year where they were scoring like 3. So there's just not going to be a whole hell of a lot of opportunity for Deontay Johnson to score a ton of fantasy points. You've seen in these games where, like, the last 3 weeks he's had, 30 targets, 10 targets a game, right? Mm-hmm. He's had 11, 8, and 9 in those 3 games. So he's getting target share. He's putting together like 9, 10-point performances. And if he catches a touchdown, that changes from 9, 10 points to, 15, 16 points, which is great. But what you want to see is your, PPR wide receiver catching 5, 6 passes and getting 60, 70 yards, and then putting on top of that a touchdown to make it a 20-point performance, not a 15-point performance. So basically what Deontay Johnson is at this point is just a low-end, I would say a low-end wide receiver too, production-wise. And I think this is what you're going to see rest of season for Deontay Johnson. And so that's what concerns me a little bit. I don't think he's a bad receiver. I don't think he's a bad play. But I don't think he's going to be a guy that wins you a week. You know what I mean? I don't think he's going to be a guy that scores 25 points, 30 points, and wins you a week. That's not going to happen. Whereas last season, you saw, a couple of times he was able to have a really big performance, 24, 30, last season. He had 23 in a game. So, like, this year, I just don't see those games happening. Maybe once it'll happen, but I don't see that, wide receiver, mid-range wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 2 upside that a lot of people saw coming into this year because the Steelers' offense is bad. Now, if Kenny Pickett starts lighting it up and playing really well and figures things out towards the end of the season, maybe that is a benefit to Deontay Johnson. He starts getting better, but at that point, it'll be too late for your team. So I would sell Deontay Johnson. You can still sell him at the value that you drafted him at, essentially. So I don't think anything's changed there, but that's kind of why I'm out on Deontay.
So he doesn't have a touchdown yet this year. Does that intrigue you, or does that not matter?
That's just proof in the pudding. That's the Steelers' offense, like.
Right. I don't know. I'm torn because, like, I see the target share and I'm like, that's really good still, even though he hasn't really produced. And I know Steelers' offense sucks, but I mean, their schedule has also been really difficult, and it continues this week against Philly. Mm-hmm. But I think it softens up after that. Yeah. So, like, there's some positives there, but it's kind of gross because of what you said. Like, and he's been so inefficient with his targets because of the Steelers' offense and quarterback play. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't know. It's intriguing because, like, if Kenny Pickett turns a corner or they trade Chase Claypool, who I know Claypool hasn't.
I mean,
really
hey,
done
things.
much,
we are not a static podcast where we just stick our opinions up our nose and say this is it. This is how it's going to go, regardless of the situation. Like, we will change our minds. We've had guys go from the sell list to the buy list this year alone. So, things could change for Deontay, but as of right now, I don't. I'm
okay. I'm not going to disagree.
All right, number 2, Brian Robinson. Rick, tell us why Brian Robinson is a sell.
Brian Robinson, oh my gosh. I mean, he's the workhorse back.
This one should be quick.
Yeah, he's not. He might be getting the 20 carries a game.
Yeah.
But he's not doing anything with it. I mean, he had 20 carries this week for 73 rushing yards at 3.65 yards per carry.
Yeah.
And that was his season high in yards per carry the week before that, 3.53, 2.44 in his first game against Tennessee. So he has not been efficient on the ground whatsoever. I don't think the Commanders are going to keep giving him the ball that much if he keeps getting 3 yards a carry. There was rumors about Antonio Gibson trade rumors, and I told you this before the show. And Ron Rivera shut it down very quickly and said that we love Gibson and we like the 1-2 punch.
Like, frick.
Yeah, I know. We like the 1-2 punch. So, and the way Gibson has been playing, even with Robinson back, it feels like they're going to kind of. They wanted to give Gibson they wanted Robinson to be the workhorse so bad, and he just hasn't been that guy.
Yeah.
So it feels like they're going to kind of move back into a full split between him and Gibson's going to get the receiving work. So Robinson has no receiving upside, and he's inefficient on the ground. So there's it's really, really gross. I think he can be an okay flex play on a week-to-week basis because he could get rushing touchdowns. But it's a good time to trade him while he's the quote-unquote workhorse in the backfield.
Yeah.
And you can pitch to people, hey, look at this rookie running back who's getting 20 carries a game as the workhorse with Washington, to a team that maybe just lost Breece Hall, to a team that needs a running back anyway. And you can pitch them to those guys and be like, here you go. Here's a solid RB2, when in reality, I don't think Robinson is that.
Yeah, I agree. 3.5 yards per carry is not good.
No.
And his first game, 17 for 60, 12 points, buoyed by a touchdown.
Right.
So it's a tough situation for Brian Robinson. Especially in standard leagues where you don't have PPR and you don't get that PPR upside. Like this guy,
I like him more in standard leagues if he's still playing standard leagues.
Right, but he still stinks. I still trade him in standard leagues. That's the thing, is that you can only go so far with inefficient running backs. You know what I mean? He's good in short yardage situations, but that's about it. And I think what you're going to end up seeing is Washington's going to have to go to somebody who's more efficient. We saw the same thing with James Robinson, right? He had a good couple first weeks, and then as the weeks went along, he has become less and less efficient, which led the Jacksonville Jaguars to say, listen, we have a running back behind you that can play well and that is much better, that is averaging 8 yards a carry. And then they traded traded James Robinson to the Jets and said, we're going to give all the carries. I think that's what Washington, they're not going to trade Brian Robinson. They just draft him and they love him. But I think that's what Washington is going to end up realizing, is that Antonio Gibson's the better running back. Sure, he can't handle 20 carries a game, but he can sure as hell go in, catch 5 passes, and rush 12 times. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And be more efficient than Brian Robinson and be explosive. And I think when they realize that, then Robinson is going to start losing work and become completely invaluable. I think the hype this summer and everything surrounding that came to a head, and then he got shot, and he's a really good story. Remember Philip Lindsay?
Yes.
Great story. Everyone loved the kid. And they were like, oh, it's such a good story. And it's like, okay, that's great, but is he providing you fantasy points? We can have fun with this. He got shot. He recovered. Great story. This is awesome. Good news. He's not good. So, I would sell Brian Robinson too. I don't know what you can get for him, but I'd sell him. And then speaking of James Robinson, once again, the man falls in our sell show. People are probably going to be like, why? Because you would think this is a good opportunity to buy James Robinson.
Yeah, I set an offer for him.
Yeah,
a cheap one.
The Jets. So on the Jacksonville Jaguars, James Robinson was inefficient. He's going to the Jets, and their offensive attack at this point is all running back. I've heard a lot of stuff coming out of the Jets situation that Michael Carter is going to be the guy, and James Robinson's going to come in and spell Michael Carter. And it's going to be kind of it's going to be almost similar to what they were doing with Breece Hall and Michael Carter, but James Robinson's going to be Michael Carter, is what I've been hearing from different people. But the big thing with James Robinson is that he's inefficient. One of the Jets' best offensive linemen, Elijah Vera Tucker, got hurt. Another one of their offensive linemen, I believe, is going to miss this game this week. So they're down offensive linemen going up against.
And they already were thin at all. I'm pretty sure they only have one starter from week 1 in their starting offensive line.
Yeah, like it. So they're in a situation where the running backs need offensive linemen. Like running backs, the only way an offense is efficient running the ball most of the time, unless your name is Saquon Barkley, is if you have good offensive line play. And I think James Robinson needs decent offensive line play. He's had success. But for a team that really can't do anything through the air right now and hasn't provided any kind of passing attack whatsoever with Zach Wilson, it's going to be tough for James Robinson to come in, get involved, and do that. And so I think there's the big reason why he's a sell at this point is that a lot of people are looking at it from the opposite end of the spectrum, is that James Robinson gets traded. This is a good thing for James Robinson. This is a good thing for Travis Etienne. James Robinson, Etienne's going to be the starter. James Robinson's probably going to be the starter. And that's the mentality that people are having. This is a perfect opportunity to sell James Robinson to a team, to an unsuspecting bystander who anticipates that James Robinson is going to be the feature running back for the New York Jets and a team that was rushing the ball pretty well to that point. And who knows, maybe James Robinson goes out this week and blows it up and I'm dead wrong, but this is your opportunity to trade James Robinson before he comes out and runs for 2 yards a carry against the Patriots.
Yeah, and Robert Saleh already said he's going to ride the hot hand. And you're right, the offensive line is huge, especially for a running back like James Robinson who doesn't really create much on his own.
Yeah.
He's better at just like finding the open hole.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much that'll be. And next 3 weeks, the Jets have the Patriots twice and the Bills. Mm-hmm. So their next 3 games are going to be really difficult. I don't think Robinson's going to have a ton of passing work with the Jets either. I think that'll be more Michael Carter. So it's really gross for me for James Robinson, especially the next couple weeks. And people are going to be more in on him right now because, as you said, like, he's going to a team that runs the ball a lot, and he could be maybe not a workhorse, but he's going to be the leading guy there with the Jets. I don't even think that, because the compensation they give up for him was like a 5th or 6th round pick, whatever it was. I think he's going to be more mixed in there with Carter. Mm-hmm. Might get short yardage work. I think he'll get like 12 to 15 carries with like 2 targets. So, and if he's not efficient with that, he's pretty much worthless.
Yep.
And I'm not going to say he's worthless, because I think later on in the season, he's got some easier games and maybe he gets more used to the system. Maybe the Jets get some guys back on the offensive line. Although I think Elijah Vera Tucker, who is their best offensive lineman, I think he tore his ACL.
Mm-hmm.
I double checked, but I think he's out for the year.
He's done. Yeah.
It might have not been an ACL, but I'm pretty sure he's out for the year. So that does not help at all. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm pretty out on James Robinson.
Yeah, I am too. All right, they're your buys and sells. Any more thoughts on these guys?
No, I think that's it.
All right, there we go. There you have it. Last show of the week. Sunday football coming up. Hopefully you win your matchups and you have a really good week. Go out and buy these players and sell the players that we talked about, the Robinsons, because there's 3 on this list. Enjoy your weekend, guys. See you later.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.